It was an ordinary day for 11-year-old Aubriana Mays in Knox County, Tennessee. Just a regular Tuesday, or so it seemed. By the night of January 30th, 2024, everything changed. Aubriana was gone. She hadn't wandered off. She hadn't gotten lost. She had been taken, and the man who abducted her wasn't a stranger. He was someone who had been planning for this moment for a long time. Edward Ahrens had waited, watched, and exploited her vulnerabilities in the most chilling way possible. This wasn't a random kidnapping. It was a meticulously planned abduction by a predator hiding in plain sight. But who was this man? And how did the desperate chase to save Aubriana play out? The clock was ticking from the moment her disappearance was reported. Panic gripped her family. Aubriana's parents were devastated, and the community was left reeling in shock and horror. Fear and dread clouded every passing minute, each second bringing with it the terrifying thought that Aubriana could be suffering unimaginable horrors. But how could they find her? Where had Ahrens taken her? The seconds felt like hours. With every heartbeat, the danger to Aubriana seemed to grow. Edward Ahrens wasn't just any criminal. His dark and twisted past told the story of a man who should have never been free to walk the streets. In 2008, Ahrens was convicted on 9 counts of child exploitation for possessing child pornography, disgusting crimes that should have ensured he remained locked up for good. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison, but like many others before him, he didn't serve the full sentence. By 2018, after just 10 years, he was out, required to register as a sex offender, but otherwise able to continue his life. His criminal history didn't start there, though, nor did it end with that sentence. Rewind to 2003 and you'll find Ahrens was convicted of attacking police officers, pleading guilty to charges of aggravated assault and obstruction of justice after a violent altercation. He had already shown his violent tendencies long before his child exploitation conviction. So how was it that a man with a history of violence and predatory behavior was back on the streets, free to prey on a young girl like Aubriana? How was this monster allowed to roam freely, unsupervised? As soon as the Mays family reported Aubriana missing, the authorities sprang into action. They knew this was not a typical missing persons case. It was far more sinister. By January 31st, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, TBI, issued an endangered child alert. Every minute mattered, and with each passing hour, the grim reality grew darker. The authorities had to act fast. Every minute without a breakthrough brought them closer to the nightmare possibility that Aubriana might never be found alive. Ahrens knew how to cover his tracks. This wasn't his first rodeo. He was experienced, methodical, and prepared for every twist. This made the search for him, and for Aubriana, infinitely harder. Law enforcement, local agencies in Tennessee and Georgia, and the TBI scoured every available lead. Phone records were analyzed, security footage was pored over, and witnesses were questioned. But Ahrens had carefully planned this abduction. He knew how to stay hidden, and for days, it seemed like he might slip away undetected, taking Aubriana with him. The community held its breath. Could they save her? Where was she? Most importantly, was she still alive? The urgency and fear were palpable as law enforcement raced against time. And just when hope seemed to be slipping away on February 2nd, 2024, they caught a break. Ahrens' vehicle was spotted driving along Interstate 75 in Hamilton County, Tennessee, near the Georgia state line. The officers knew that this might be their only chance to rescue Aubriana, to bring her back before it was too late. But Ahrens had other plans. Rather than pull over, he hit the gas. The chase was on. A high-speed pursuit with everything at stake. High-speed chases are always dangerous, but this one was fraught with a different level of anxiety. A young girl, an innocent victim, was in the car with a violent predator who would stop at nothing to escape. Officers couldn't risk pushing too hard. They couldn't afford to make a mistake, but they also couldn't let him get away. The tension was at an all-time high, and every mile felt like a lifetime as police cruisers tailed Ahrens' car, trying to bring the pursuit to a safe end. What must have been going through Aubriana's mind? Terrified, trapped in a speeding car with the man who had abducted her. And Ahrens? He knew his time was running out, and he wasn't ready to give up. With the law closing in on all sides, he pushed the pedal to the floor, determined to escape at any cost. Finally, Ahrens' vehicle was forced off the highway, cornered near the East Ridge exit on I-75 South. But even then, with nowhere left to go, he wasn't ready to surrender. Despite having no chance of escaping, he refused to comply with the officer's orders to get out of the car. Instead, in one final desperate move, he tried to turn his vehicle into a weapon, revving the engine and attempting to ram through the police barricade. The officers had no choice. In that split second, they knew that Ahrens was not just a kidnapper. He was a dangerous man willing to do anything, even murder, to evade capture. 4 officers from Knox County and Catoosa County opened fire, aiming to neutralize the threat before any further harm could come to Aubriana or themselves. The shots rang out, loud and final, as Ahrens was struck. His violent escape attempt came to a bloody, crashing end as he slumped over, fatally wounded. But what about Obriana? As Ahrens lay dying in the driver's seat, the officers rushed to the car. Their hearts raced as they braced themselves for what they might find inside. And then, in a moment of relief and disbelief, they saw her, Obriana Mays, alive, sitting in the passenger seat, shaken, terrified, but miraculously unharmed. She was quickly pulled to safety and taken away from the scene, free from the grip of the man who had abducted her. The nightmare was over. Obriana was rescued, but her ordeal was far from finished. Physically, she was safe, but emotionally, the scars of her abduction would linger. She had been taken by someone she trusted, forced into a high-speed chase, and witnessed a violent standoff that ended in death. The trauma would take time to heal. She was taken to a nearby hospital for assessment and then reunited with her family. But the journey to recovery was just beginning. Whenever officers are involved in a shooting, there are always questions. Was it justified? Could the situation have ended differently? The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation immediately launched a review of the incident. The public demanded answers. Had the officers acted properly in taking a life to save another? The investigation was meticulous, examining every detail of the confrontation. The officers' decision to open fire was not taken lightly, but the TBI concluded that they had no other option. Ahrens had refused to comply, and by trying to use his vehicle as a weapon, he left the officers with a single choice: use deadly force to save Obriana and themselves. All the officers involved were cleared of any wrongdoing. It wasn't the outcome anyone had hoped for, but it was the only way to bring Obriana home alive. And yet, even after Ahrens was killed, there was still one haunting question. How did he manage to lure Obriana in the first place? This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment act. Ahrens had been grooming her online for weeks, if not months, using social media, the very platforms children use to connect with friends. Ahrens manipulated Obriana, gaining her trust and ultimately exploiting it in the worst way imaginable. This case serves as a chilling reminder of the dangers lurking online, especially for young, impressionable children who may not fully understand the risks. Predators like Ahrens know how to exploit these platforms, grooming their victims with manipulative precision. Parents need to stay vigilant, keeping an eye on their children's online activity and educating them about the potential threats hiding behind a screen. Obriana's rescue was a victory for law enforcement, but it also exposed deep flaws in the justice system. How was someone like Ahrens, an individual with a violent past and sexual crimes, able to walk free? Advocacy groups called for stricter monitoring of convicted sex offenders and harsher penalties for those violating probation. Ahrens should have been under closer scrutiny, yet he was able to continue his predatory behavior unchecked. This story reveals the dangerous gaps in the system and how they can have life-threatening consequences. Obriana Mays was saved, but her story is a sobering reminder of how fragile safety truly is. Edward Ahrens, a convicted predator, was stopped before he could do even greater harm, thanks to the swift and decisive actions of law enforcement. But it also raises the question, are we doing enough to protect vulnerable children from predators? Are there more Ahrenses out there, waiting for their opportunity? As we reflect on this story, it's crucial to stay aware, stay informed, and protect the ones we love. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, comment, and share. Subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon to stay updated. Stay safe,